regular meeting of the College Township Council to order Thursday, February 16th, 2023. If you are able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Apologize for the delayed start. Council did meet in executive session just prior to this meeting to discuss a personnel matter. With that, our first item on our agenda is open discussion. If there is anyone in person or online who would like to, who has something to bring to council that is not already on the agenda, please do so now. All right, seeing none. Next is new agenda items. Anything? Great. All right. Plans. P1, Arise Federal Credit Union Final Land Development Plan. Lindsay.
Great, thank you. Mike has a brief presentation on the proposed Arise Federal Credit Union. This plan was submitted on December 19th, 2022. Staff has reviewed the plan and the PC recommended approval of the plan along with the sidewalk waiver, which we will get to here shortly. Deferral. The proposed development is located on approximately 6 acres. The site improvements include a 2-story building, a solar array, parking areas, sidewalks, drive-through, and the site utilities. Next is just a greater view of the surrounding properties in Dale Summit. You can see there the parcel is highlighted in orange. A little history of the lot. If you could go next slide, please. In December of '86, Benner Associated purchased the property from Edward Middleman. And in 2014, the Christ Community Church purchased the property from Benner Associates. And then in 2021, most recently, the Stalker Chevrolet Incorporated purchased the property from the Christ Community Church. Go ahead, Mike. The remaining portion of the property that you see is going to remain open for development to the west of the Stalker Chevrolet body shop. That body shop is located on lot 3A, which is the lot towards the back. When council first saw the sketch plan, this is lot 3A here. When council first saw the sketch plan, the solar array was in a different location, but that didn't meet our ordinance. So it had to be relocated to ensure that it wasn't in any front yard setbacks. And also a fence was added, you can see here, to block the solar array from the Premier Drive extension. Okay, next slide. One of the other changes made to the plan since the sketch plan presentation is the entrance from the Benner Pike. Originally, it was to be a right-in, right-out only, but the Planning Commission's request, the customers can now turn left from the Benner Pike into the property, but still can only turn right out of the property. Those turning left will have to come over here and utilize the Ellis Place entrance back out onto the Benner Pike. Okay, next.
Yeah. That's gonna happen.
So we have a waiver request. Tonight's council's first opportunity, actually it should say deferral request, I apologize. Tonight is council's opportunity to consider this first deferral request since we've implemented the pedestrian facilities master plan and updated the subdivision and land development ordinance. The pedestrian plan identifies the Benner Pike as a secondary pedestrian facility, which means it should be targeted for pedestrian facilities. An overall score of 18 was given to the project from the prioritization matrix, and the higher the score, the higher the priority is to have pedestrian facilities. The score can go up to a 30. The following slides outline the requirements for a deferral. Mr. Toretti's here tonight to better explain the request, but I do need to mention that the Planning Commission did recommend the deferral for up to 2 years or less. We do have a few outstanding comments. Those major comments include the final approval of the traffic impact study prior to occupancy, and the deferral, of course, and the fact that the Stalker subdivision and land development ordinance has to be recorded prior to the Arise plan being recorded, because there are a lot of references on that plan to the Arise, or on the Arise plan to the Stalker plan. And then we get to just a few renderings that they provided for us. They make look a little different than they did when you first saw them with the sketch plan. You can see the sidewalk proposed around the property. The deferral is not for this sidewalk, it's for the remaining about a little over an acre to the west.
On Benner?
On the Benner Pike, yes, thank you. And so then we have the different views here. And finally, we have a motion sheet for you, just outlining every remaining comment if you so decide to move the plan forward tonight. So that's what I have for you, and like I said, Mr. Toretti's here if you have any questions for him.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Mr. Toretti, you might as well. You know you'll get up there.
Nobody's going to ask any, so.
Chances are good that we will.
Okay, yes, I'm Mark Toretti of Pentair Engineering, and I also have a representative from Arise Federal Credit Unions on the video too.
On
So.
video. All right, thank you so much. Questions, comments? I'll start with Susan.
I have no questions yet.
Okay, oh, good. Comments, anything?
No
Start with
comments.
nothing. Start with, okay, Dustin?
My comments or questions are around the deferral,
Uh-huh.
and then I thought, we're gonna get more into that, or,
We can do that now.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, why we're requesting the deferral, it isn't a big thing, but we just more working with the staff when we started this project, and they were saying, rather than having this big, long, straight sidewalk along the Benner Pike, can you, maybe make it, a little nicer, a little different, and maybe incorporate some of the landscaping in with it too, so it's not sitting out by itself. And so, whenever Rise started looking at the, and their architect started looking at the site, and they wanted to have that curved parking at the intersection there, and we started looking at the sidewalk and started throwing some curves into the sidewalk design, and the landscape, some of the landscaping comes out on the other side of the sidewalk, just to make it a little more interesting. In other words, just accents it. And it worked well with this, with this site. And our deferral is just basically on the western part, on the left there. We don't know what will be going in there, and if the opportunity arises where we could do something unique over on that side with whatever, based upon what goes in there, we'd like to have that opportunity. It's only for up to 2 years, so if in 2 years nothing goes in there, it'll be just a regular sidewalk. But that worked well, because initially for the subdivision, you deferred the area along the Benner Pike for not to be installed as part of the Stalker subdivision. What worked out well was Arise came in right after that and got in to develop this lot, so we were able to dovetail that, and hopefully maybe soon after that could happen on the last part of on the western part of the site, and we can make it just a little more interesting. That's really the request, is just have that opportunity based upon our discussions with staff and what they thought would be a nice opportunity to just make it a little more unique.
Mm-hmm.
So for the essence of creativity. Huh?
Yes.
All right.
Well, I mean, if I may interject,
Yeah.
some of the, I'll give you your own answer that you gave, I feel like you had given to us when the sketch plan came through, and it's also because you won't know where the driveways are.
Yes.
It's difficult to predict those sorts of things.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, so if something does develop there within the next 2 years, we'll try to work with that and, and make it into, a little more unique design. If not, we can still do this sidewalk, but it just gives us that opportunity is all we're asking for.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
So what you're saying, Mr. Toretti, is should the opportunity arise?
Yeah.
Eric?
Is Dave Fryer back on council?
Elliot Abrams.
Oh, that was.
He'd be proud. The staff recommendation, what does number 10, why does the other property have to be recorded? Why is that a condition?
There are,
I'll explain. I mean, basically between, they're sharing the stormwater basins, the stormwater system that's there, and all that has been through the Stalker land development plan. And so they're looking at wrapping that up. The attorney's just been trying to get some of these easement agreements all wrapped up, and then, you know, we can get that plan recorded,
Okay.
and then same with this one. But yeah, that's really.
So elements of this plan depend on.
Correct.
That plan. Okay, makes sense. And of course, I have to rib you a little bit about the sidewalk issue. Explain to me your second paragraph in your letter that tells us why, if we would have required the entire sidewalk for stalkers, that they couldn't have built this on this site.
Probably what I meant is, it would have been, it could have potentially have been just a straight sidewalk. And this just is all I think I was meaning to say on that, with regards to the sidewalk deferral. Like I said.
It would have been less convenient.
Yes, exactly. And
Which is different than,
Yeah.
I don't blame you for saying that, but I had
Yeah, but I mean,
to call you on
if-
that.
The phrase is the
If it
more
would've been-
interesting design
Yeah,
layout.
if Arise hadn't come in this quickly and then Stalker was built, you know, that wouldn't occur.
And it's only important because we're talking about the western half of the site right
Yes.
now.
Uh-huh.
So it's really, if they had to, they could remove the sidewalk and put in that site. So we're
Yeah.
really talking about not having to put a sidewalk in. It could conceivably have to be removed, or portions of it are
Yes.
removed.
Uh-huh. And that deferral is only for 2 years per your ordinance, so.
And I think the 2 years gives us the comfort level for me to support it.
Yeah.
So that's all I had.
Thanks. Rich?
Yeah, no, I've just really enjoyed this plan through the whole process,
Yeah.
from a sketch plan, renderings, you know, something potentially for the future there. But even more than that, the growth of Mark Toretti. When I first started, it was sidewalks to nowhere, right? Then it moved to sidewalks with less traffic. And now we've come to unique design layouts.
Standing ovation?
It's excellent. That's all I got.
Yeah, no,
Tap it down? I don't know.
Yeah, no, on a serious point, I mean, this is a project where we came with a sketch plan, we talked to staff about some ideas, planning commission gave us comments there with regards to the entrance and that, so we do listen, and we're, you know, try to make things work as best as we can with the input we receive from the township, so.
Yeah, I know it's more time and effort to do a sketch plan, but here's an example of where
Yeah.
that was probably worth the effort.
Yeah.
Because here we are with
Right, and candidly, I think your client is ending up with a better project.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, how about now, Susan?
No questions, I think you answered them all, thank you.
Anything from
Thank you.
the public? Anybody online?
I'm seeing no hands.
Okay, great. Yes, Lindsay?
Just to update you, in your memo, or what you have in front of you, we have received a letter of intent to serve from UAJA.
Number 6?
Yes, so you can remove number 6.
All right, it's got trickier. It's already, yeah.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the preliminary final land development plan of Arise Federal Credit Union dated December 19, 2022, and last revised February 2nd, 2023, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied. Final signatures must be obtained and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. Number 2, pay all outstanding review fees. Number 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer and outstanding plan review comments from staff. Number 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 108-12. Number 5, post the surety as approved by the township engineer prior to recordation. Number 6, provide an intent to serve letter from College Township Water Authority. Number 7, provide proof of NPDES approval. Number 8, approve the request for sidewalk deferral for the portion of the lot not currently being developed for a period of 2 years or less. Number 9, Stalker Auto Body Shop preliminary final land development plan must be recorded prior to recordation of the Arise Federal Credit Union preliminary final plan, land development plan. All right, now I lost my count. Number 10, provide approved PennDOT highway occupancy permit prior to occupancy. And number 11, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
All right, I have a motion
I will happily second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right,
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, next we have reports, manager's update.
Yes. Couple of items here I wanted to update. With respect to the Dale Summit Small Area Plan, or as I think we'll begin to refer to it as well, our form-based code effort. Our consultant, the contract has been fully executed with DPZ, and they will be in town beginning February 27th through March 1st for touring of the area and beginning the process. So we're excited that is launching at the end of February. A couple of other items here. We'll be talking here momentarily with respect to LTAC and LTAC recommendations. But I also wanted to make a quick mention. I've received information today indicating that with respect to the Thompson Woods Governance Committee, that the Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority has actually appointed a delegate to serve on the governance committee, and I believe that individual is Mr. Bill Keogh from Ferguson Township. But I've not been formally notified of that at this point. So that continues to progress, and just as a reminder, at this point, all of the advisory committee have been identified and are in place, and 3 of the 5 positions or members of the governance committee are in place. Both of College Township's delegates and now the Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority delegate is in place. And at this point, we're just awaiting on 2 of the borough delegates. And once that happens, then we'll be able to move toward initial meetings and getting that underway, and that whole governance process functioning the way it was originally envisioned. So, good news. There is one thing that is new, a couple of things that are new here on the manager's update that I felt that were important to add. The first is something that we have referred to in a past meeting, but there's not been an awful lot of activity. But that has to do with the proposed Shentel cable franchise agreement. Shentel is the Shenandoah Cable Communications Company, or words to that effect. And they are actually looking to create a presence here within the Center Region. So they would be competition for Comcast. They have a number of years ahead of them as far as building out a system in terms of the physical infrastructure that's going to be required. But in order for them to get started to do that, they need to have a cable franchise agreement with the municipalities that they hope to serve. They have just recently completed their initial foray into Center County, and that was with the Borough of State College as well as Ferguson Township. And on the heels of that, even actually before it was fully executed, Shentel has reached out to Harris Township, Patton Township, and College Township, and we are now in the process of developing a draft franchise agreement ultimately for approval by College Township. In the past, we have worked as a cable consortium, which included not only members of the Center region, but also included other municipalities within Center County. For example, Belmont Borough, Benner Township, Spring Township as well? I don't recall. I don't believe it was
I don't think so.
And as well as Half Moon Township. In this case, this is a little bit different. Chantel is not seeking a broader base at this point. They're looking to develop cable franchise agreements with a core within the Center region. And so that's why this is not actually a cable consortium initiative as it has been with Comcast in the past. All that to say, we are working with the Cohen Law Group. Cohen is based out of Pittsburgh. They have a particular expertise in cable and communications law in Pennsylvania. We have worked with them extensively in the past, both on franchise agreements as well as our wireless communications facilities ordinances that we have done several of those over the last couple of years. So we're in the process of working with them. One of the things that Chantel has done, Chantel has actually is paying Cohen on behalf of the municipalities that they're seeking the agreements from in an effort to streamline and to remove cost burdens from those municipalities. So we're actually working with Phil Frago from Cohen, which is the individual that we have worked with previously on the Comcast agreements. And Phil has provided a draft agreement that the Harris Township, Patton Township, and myself, the managers, have reviewed. There's a few questions, and once we receive those answers and we get a second draft back, at that point in time, I believe it would be prudent to circulate that to members of council for review, take questions, go back, try to get us to a final document. So that process will continue. I don't have a particular timeline at this point, but I did want to be sure, since I've not reported on it before, because there hasn't been a lot of activity other than the behind-the-scenes work of crafting the agreement. I just wanted to be sure the council was aware that this was something that in all likelihood will come before you yet here in calendar year 2023. So, and the last item has to do with a quick update with respect to the spongy moth and the anticipated outbreak that we're going to have here in this spring and summer. And for that, I'm going to yield my time to Amy Kerner.
All right, well, I'll make it quick. I did provide a memo that was in the agenda, the manager's update. Literally, I think Jen published the agenda like 2 o'clock, and about 4 o'clock I got a response from the Conservancy. But nonetheless, so in the memo, I did not know if they had planned to do anything yet. I hadn't heard back whether they had traversed over the mountain to determine the extent of the spongy moth. But the email I did get does indicate that there is significant numbers that they are going to seek spraying. So basically, they've just asked if there's any reason why they can't contact Patton Township to find, or to the vendor that they selected, to see if they can't coincide the same time frame, basically extend the contract. So I gave them the contact information, and I know they're going to take it from there. Getting back to my memo, the one thing we talked about was maybe, offering our dollars towards this program with the stipulation that it includes Stony Batter and Mountainside. Mountainside's not adjacent, so that's the only problem. I don't know if they will do it if it's not contiguous to the rest of the spraying. But if it can be, then I would suggest, because that's the only other area that's in that vicinity that's owned by the township and basically heavily wooded. So, but that's my update at this point in time. So they are going to spray, and they're going to see if they can't align the contract with the vendor from Patton Township for the same time frame. Okay?
And that completes the manager's update. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer. We are happy.
Justin, did I see one coming through?
Yeah. So I guess my first one just goes around with the cable. I'm not asking for a crystal ball thing, but would there be a new cable consortium being formed then, versus the old one with Chantel?
I wouldn't
center
necessarily
region?
see that.
Okay.
Only because up until the consortium was actually cobbled
Right.
together some number of years ago, every individual municipality essentially dealt separately with the cable provider. And that's kind of the track that this seems to be on, or that Chantel seems to be on at the moment. What I would say is that at such time that Chantel looks to expand beyond the immediate center region, I think at that point, it clearly makes sense for this to fall into the consortium category.
Okay.
So it's not too late, later. Later is not too late to develop a consortium.
Well, I think it would be the same center region cable, or the center county cable consortium. It would just be dealing with a separate contract.
Right.
So there's an A and a B. A, Comcast is here, and B could be, and C or D could be any of the newer ones that might come along.
Okay.
But again, these are 10-year contracts typically, and that is what the proposal is at this point in time. And essentially, the terms of what we're seeing in the draft are virtually identical to those terms that have been incorporated and approved for Comcast's
Okay.
franchise agreement.
I had a second question,
Yeah.
unless anybody else has anything else.
Got
on
the
this
floor.
one.
Yeah, you got the floor.
The spongy moth, I'm curious to how we see that ending up. Is there gonna be, are we saying Conservancy, we want to help, pay the funds, we want, Stony Batter, Mountainside to be done, but we want you to go ahead and hire? And then would we have an agreement that we sign with them, like a memorandum of record or something, and saying, you kind of take care of it and we'll fund it, or what?
That, I don't know how we handled it in the past,
I think the
but
last time that we had participated in was it 2008?
That's what it
maybe.
references.
I know they
Well,
sprayed in
Rockview
2008.
and Mount Nittany Conservancy.
Right, I actually believe that it was on the basis of a donation.
Okay.
That the
Okay.
township made directly to the Conservancy,
Gotcha.
who then executed the contracts. I think that we're open to considering whatever needs to be done. So if it ends up that we, for some reason, need to be a lead, because things, I'm sure a lot of the landscape has changed since 2008. If there's a need for the township to be a primary, for example, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
But I think it needs to unfold a little bit more.
yeah, and I think the one thing we have to be careful with, of course, being a municipal entity, if we get too large of a contract, we have to bid this ourselves too. So they being private probably can handle it a lot better if we donate to the cause.
Right. Okay, thanks. I'm good.
Thank you. Ms. Bud?
Yeah. On that, Amy, I think you're 100% right. If we don't have to, if we can avoid that. But I would offer that, don't let what we budgeted, limit what we need to do. It seems like we're going to fall well under that.
Yes, based on the prices, we certainly can cover the area that the township owns up in that area. The difficulty we were having is, if you think about the township as a whole, what we own is mostly parks, aren't heavily wooded, and they really spray, a large area. They're not gonna hopscotch here. The only other thing that we own are street trees, and that is a different type of spray, and you're not going to do that in the same manner that they're doing. So that's why our focus really went towards what we thought could be the best attack for the areas that we have that are heavily wooded.
Interesting.
Back to Chantel for a second. Did I hear you say that they are reimbursing us or they are paying Cohen?
Yeah, they actually executed a separate contract with Cohen for
Okay.
each of the municipal, for all the municipal legal work. That's-
On the surface, ordinarily, that would raise some red flags.
Understood. And rightfully so. The difference here, however, is the fact that Cohen has represented both the consortium and individual municipalities in the past, and we have the utmost confidence in working with Cohen, and the fact that the draft agreement with Chantel so closely mirrors the agreement that we have presently in place with Comcast.
Okay, just so the consortium is comfortable with Cohen knowing who they're working for despite who's paying them.
Understood.
Okay. And then lastly, what are the notable elements of Pike Street that are left to be done in the spring? Anything besides landscaping?
Landscaping and line striping are the two biggies that's left.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay, anything?
Yeah, just on the Chantel, I think there's specific language in the contract with Cohen that identifies who they're working for.
Right.
Just confirming the Chantel agreement will have elements, the CNET type elements, the same as Comcast and everything?
Correct.
That's great, that's great.
Great. I had a quick question about the SPPA working group. When are our College Township reduced range numbers due specifically?
So the original deadline that was put forward to the working group was February 28th. That was based off of a schedule that had them providing all three pieces of information to us. That included the fact sheet, the frequently asked questions, and the proposal. The proposal is under legal review as of early February, so they didn't deliver that as of yet. The working group's anticipated to see that on the 22nd. So I reached out to Pam Adams, had a discussion with her, kind of expressed where we were, expressed what tonight's agenda looked like, and asked, can we defer that until March 2nd? And she said that was fine.
Great, okay. So is that, we've received a little bit of correspondence, I think, as individuals, either by mouth or by email or, by carrier pigeon. People are interested, people want to know, so if there could be just some soundbite that we can have or share on the website or something, so we can point people to.
So the way it is right now, we fully anticipate that the College Township Water Authority at its meeting on March 1st will have this information and make their determination.
Okay.
And then the following night would be, on the 2nd of March, would be council.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, again, Pam would like to have it by the 28th, but she understands kind of where we're at, and we appreciate her patience on that.
Super. All right, appreciate that.
Just towards that, Madam Chair, we're going to be seeing this at General Forum on the COG part on the 27th.
Yes.
It appears that it's on a marching path towards that, just because of timing and everything.
Yeah, the way it worked out was if we would have gotten the information on the 2nd, we were lined up very well to bring it to you tonight. Unfortunately, with that delay, it'll be delivered after the meeting, and so we just wanted to give you a complete package when you have your discussion.
I mean, if Pam says she's good with the timing, then I'm good with the timing, so that's great. We have a long agenda tonight.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Anything else for the manager? Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to ask in the Spongy Moth, do we need to evaluate Thompson Woods, or is that something we should be kicking over to the new governance committee?
I think that probably would be that. But
Well, I don't think that
they're
the
not, they're
governance committee is going to be
Up and running.
fully
Up and running.
up
Right.
and running at this point in time. And to be honest, that would need to, what we can do and how it is set up at the moment, Clearwater Conservancy is very much involved with, and it's not advocacy, I can't remember the word that I'm looking for.
Conservation.
Stewardship and conservation, thank you.
Well done.
Stewardship, yeah.
Of Thompson Woods Preserve. And I would say that we probably should reach out to them and ask,
Okay.
what should we be considering relative to Thompson Woods Preserve event?
Okay.
And if there is something that should be done, it could be something that we consider as part of this process as well.
The only thing I'll add to that, since you mentioned it, is Millbrook Marsh has some significant trees and some significantly aged oaks specifically.
I think Fair Oaks, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Clearwater could speak to that in that same conversation,
You can certainly ask.
so that might be good. And that's a, you know, I mean, especially on this end, it's pretty densely populated. They're coming. So, the caterpillars are coming. Okay, not gonna be funny when they come, so we all know. Okay. Done with the manager's update, COG, regional, county, and liaison reports. Give me just a moment. Jen sent me a beautiful email earlier today. And the listing of all of the committees that have met. Thank you so much, Jen. All right, so I'm going to start with Susan.
I'll report out on the COG Public Safety meeting. We met this past Wednesday on the 14th. It was a very brief meeting, 30 minutes, and we unanimously voted to forward the nominations to the COG General Forum for consideration of the two Code Board of Appeals members that were up for renomination, Jonathan Pino and J. Michael Leakey. Sean Kaufman shared a year 2022 review of the fire protection program. He listed out 1,386 incidents, talked a little bit about false alarms, the highest incidents in State College Borough. So they're working with the code authority to look at ways to reduce the false alarms. And there were questions from the council or the borough member, borough council member there about collecting fees for repeat false alarms. And so that is in force. And then the last item that we discussed was Alphas are looking at sending out for proposals the replacement of the station, the State College station door. It's a 3-bay door, and every time that door opens, they lose heat. So they're looking at other projects that they might look at a 2-bay door. So that might be a little more complicated process. So, like I said, very short meeting. And I think I should defer the conversation on the LTAC committee to the chair, Don, who's here tonight.
Makes sense. Thank you, Susan. All right, next I have Rich. Finance?
Yes, Finance met February 9th, sent out a report today. The key points are we're really looking at the 2024 process already. We've got some draft documents, draft processes and everything that are making the rounds, and we're going to be following up on those. The big bad news was that the COG Finance Director is probably going to be taking a position with the school district, and Mr. Vigilone's been with the COG since the COG started a finance department, so clearly that's gonna have an impact. But the staff's working on the continuity of that. So, pending any questions. Mine was only a 2.5-hour meeting.
Oh, is that all?
Yes.
That way it was 2.5 hours and 20 seconds. Well done. Any questions for Rich? Any questions for Susan? I'm sorry, I didn't give an opportunity for that. No? Okay. Eric?
I don't know how long mine was, but it was about an hour longer than it needed to be. It was the next day. And it was Tuesday the 10th. This was facilities. And I did provide the written report, and I wasn't going to mention anything, but since it came up, I do want to talk a little bit about the solar power purchase agreement, the discussion that we had. You'll note in my report that I suggested that maybe COG wait until the municipalities have a chance to chew on this and make their own determination as to percentage-wise, because theoretically, then we'd all be better informed, and then we could go and present. I thought it'd be easier to reach a consensus. That idea didn't get any traction. In fact, the thinking was that COG ought to be the one doing this first to give the municipality some direction. I disagreed with that in particularly because there was a lot of nitpicking with this from the individual members on the Facilities Committee who clearly had not yet talked and discussed this amongst their other elected officials. So I thought we were getting the cart ahead of the horse here, but we ended up setting a goal of 75%. And then when Rich mentioned that this goes before general forum in February, a week or two before we're even going to discuss it, I think it further highlights the reason why I thought COG should be at the end of this discussion, because we're going to be put in a position to ask what we support regionally before we even have a decision and have a chance to talk about it, as a municipality. However, that isn't how it worked, but the fact that we're going to be expected to make a decision, I think in February, troubles me a bit, because now our discussion's been pushed back to March. Again, COG was 3% of the total purchase. Ours is what, 3 or 4%?
3 with the water authority.
Yeah, so it's really not that critical that we get that accurate. I mean, the big ones, I think, are what the county and the school district. I mean, they're the ones that really need to narrow their range down, and that decision's going to drive the cost more than ours. So it was more a philosophical approach. Anyways, that's what I was referencing in there.
Thank you. And did you have another committee?
No,
Okay,
I don't know how that happened.
nicely done.
This one's long enough for 2 committee meetings.
That's fair. Dustin?
Yeah, two for yesterday, and they were actually short meetings. 2 notes for IDA, just interviews for vacancies have not yet taken place. And so those, are reaching out to go ahead and initiate those. The executive director recruitment activities are beginning, and the IDA is seeking, or will be seeking, the extension from us for the interim executive director services through the end of June. We all kind of knew that was happening, or was going to happen. So that'll allow them to go ahead and continue the hiring process through that. So the Spring Creek Watershed Commission did meet, and I gave you a lengthy report because I just gave you all the background and the materials I had, but basically, bottom line, we had a special meeting yesterday, and then following the special meeting, we had an orientation and an onboarding session just for new members and anyone else in the public. But bottom line was, we reviewed a solicitor opinion on the bylaws that we saw that have been circulated around, and the solicitor had some good comments, and then we incorporated those comments and then comments from the township into the revised bylaws, and then we then passed those bylaws as those comments were incorporated. So, and that was following the passing of the new bylaws. Then we elected the treasurer, which was filled by Kevin Abbey, and then we also, actually the committee member at large is an appointment, so I appointed Jasmine Fields as chair. So that's it.
Nice. Well done. Any questions for Dustin? Okay, Joan, I see you, and I think I know what you're going to talk about. I'm going to give my committee report, which will talk about the SPPA as well. Will that, and then I'll let you comment. Sounds good? Okay, great. So, the Climate Action Sustainability Committee met this week as well. Unfortunately, we arrived and the meeting was not able to be held technically because we did not have a quorum. That said, Pam did go ahead and provide an unofficial version of the SPPA slideshow and information that she provided to all of you, or to the other committees, I'm sure. We did have a small group. There was not consensus about how much. The reason for 75% given to us by staff, the recommended 75 by facilities and finance, given to us by staff, was because COG may be losing its rentals in the next few years, depending on what the overall envelope of COG is to be in the future. We do have some rentals, areas that we rent for some of our operations at COG. Should those all eventually go under one roof, once we agree to a certain amount of kilowatt hours, we're locked into that. We're paying that. So should the overall envelope of COG shrink at some point in the future, this is what staff said. I don't know if this is ringing any bells for you guys.
Even if it does, we're still a percentage of 3%. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense.
Right.
But we could have picked 90, and it would barely move the needle for the group. COG, that is.
But that's not what I'm talking about. Like, when COG agrees to, let's say, whatever it is, 60.
You're paying it whether you use it or not.
Right. So let's say COG itself uses, I'm completely making this up, 60 kilowatt hours. If we agree to that, we're paying for that. So
But
if
at this stage, we're not agreeing yet. We're simply
Sure,
narrowing the number down.
sure.
So I can just share what the discussion at finance was that there was concern that if you came in, from a philosophical standpoint, you can say 190, all that kind of stuff. But if those numbers, when the real numbers get out, and we go into the developer and we're saying 75, and then the numbers don't support that, and we have to go 70, that opens the floor back up to the developer to come back and renegotiate.
If the whole group goes to 70.
Right. No, I get that, but, if everybody's saying philosophically 100, and that number doesn't jive, then that's a concern. And the other thing, I think, one of the things that got put out was that how do I say it nicely? COG isn't the most efficient in electricity usage right now. They've got a lot of old systems and everything, so that might factor in as well.
So the other feeling I have on it is, yes, we can change the number when the moment comes, but we really should put forth a good faith estimate. Sure, we're not like even an important percentage of the overall number, but what we decide at the end in February's meeting, I don't think we'll be allowed to change much, getting 37 elected officials around the table to agree. Like, I do think our range that we put forward in February, can it change based on the numbers we get back? Yes. But philosophically, I don't see it changing very much, or the ability to change that very much. I don't know. Anyway, all I'm saying is Cass was actually pleased that facilities and finance came back with 75%. That was a very positive feeling, and didn't have much more to add at that time. I also introduced a future agenda item, which you all know intimately now, which is the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan process that we undertook earlier this month. And told the group that, we were basically pilot testing a way for the other municipalities to wrap their arms around the cap.
We'll wait.
Getting myself lulled to sleep by the bells. Okay. All right. Joan, we are open to giving us your comments now. Thank you for your patience.
Hello, everybody. Folks,
Yep.
now you can hear me, right?
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Joan Bouchard. I live in Patton Township at the village at Penn State. And I don't see this just as a financial issue. First of all, I see here that there are 4 of the entities of the 6 that are the municipal governments here that already have some kind of 100% by 2050, all green, no carbon emissions goals. And I know that College Township hasn't had a chance to do that yet, but I see College Township as being a little bit behind the trend of what some of the other townships are doing, and that concerns me because I am an educator and by trade ever since graduating from college, and I still am. And I think your major constituency here actually is those that are 30 and under, because those are the ones that are expecting us to do something. They can't do it yet now, but they know that there are parts of their world that by 2050, if these goals aren't met, there'll be parts of the world that are uninhabitable. And, you know, we're losing land as the sea rises, and we have all these wildfires and tornadoes and other weather incidents that they're going to have to deal with. And the people who are living here in the village of Penn State that have children that are the age of between, 20 and the mid-30s, they're very seriously considering whether they're actually going to have children, because they aren't at all sure that the world that they would be bringing children into is going to be the world that they would want to bring children into. And this concerns me a lot, because it means a lot for the future of our country. And you've already had the experience of having a big constituency have trouble with some of the decisions that have been made in College Township with regard to the casino. But this time, you've got a constituency of people who can't even come and express themselves because they're too young and they're involved in their education or trying to start a career or trying to buy a house. But so I'm kind of here talking for them. And I'd like to say a couple of other things, and that is that sometimes the thing to do is the right thing. And yes, you're true. It is true that you only have 3%. But on the other hand, what are you saying to the people that live in College Township? If you go for 100%, you're saying we're in favor of a livable world. If you do anything less than that, you're saying, well, we're not too sure. But the numbers make sense too, because I was just at the meeting this morning of the State College Borough Water Association, or whatever it is. And the numbers that were being presented there by, let's see, what was his name? He did the presentation, and his name has escaped me by now, but it'll come back as soon as I'm not trying to look for it. But anyway, what he pointed out is that according to the way that the company that will be doing the solar panels and running it for the next 15 years, that's going to be coming in, it looks like somewhere around 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And the company that is going to be providing...
Ms. Bouchard, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to keep, this is a committee report, and we really do appreciate your comments. This will actually be an agenda item in March when College Township decides. So before, I just didn't want, I feel like we've already gone over a few minutes here, so
Okay.
I want you to have our attention and have your moment to have your comments. But I just wanted to remind you that this is a report on a committee when it comes to the COG decision, and we will be discussing this on our College Township agenda the first meeting of March.
Okay.
Could you wrap up your comment?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Bouchard.
Surely.
Right. So any other reports? Yes.
Sue Smith.
Ms. Smith.
All right, I was late. another meeting. I just wanted to make sure that you all got an email I sent you that was the transcript of the video of the State College School District meeting where they just,
And the presentation.
for the presentation. And the two young children who spoke, who were younger, one in high school, I think both in high school, were the most eloquent and had the best message, and I just want to make sure that you all saw this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you also for the musical interlude.
Yes, it's much better than yours.
Yeah. All right.
Madam Chair, well, just one piece. As you know, I was appointed the elected liaison to the Whitehall Road Park project team. And one piece of important info that I'd like to share is that the water line, we've heard a lot about the water line and we need to get that in and everything like that. That work began this past Monday. And on the first day, they got 900 feet into it. However, they also got a surprise from the State College Borough Water Authority. I'll just say College Township Water Authority is much more friendly. But they've overcame that, and they had an additional contractor meeting this week, which was very, very positive.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I thought there'd be no work on the park over the winter.
All right, I'm just taking a note to watch those two young people in that meeting one more time. Okay. SCASD meeting. All right, thank you so much to the additional comments, and those will be taken into consideration as we approach our meeting in March, where we discuss the SPPA further. Any further COG? Okay, next, staff or PC, Planning Commission.
Okey doke. I have my radio turned off. I apologize for that. Good evening.
Good evening.
We had a good meeting. It was February 7th meeting. Actually, it took an hour and 3/4, hour and a half. And could have been a little bit shorter, but it goes as it goes. It was a productive meeting. We looked at the sketch plan for the State College Food Bank. And I have to report that I agree that having sketch plans is a wonderful way to get interaction and get some thoughts on the table between the design professionals and the planning commission and eventually to council. We're very enthusiastic about what they plan to do. I think it went over quite well. They came to the meeting with the idea of extending the sidewalk throughout the total frontage of the property. They tend to reconstruct the whole paving condition of the site, which will immediately help the stormwater management and collection of water. If you know the site, there's a series of huge pine trees, old pine trees on the back of the property, separates the property from the residential component. And they're going to tear those down and put new landscaping along the edge, which I thought was pretty complimentary for their design. We're looking forward to, we had some comments, I have to admit, you always do. One was the entrance and exiting of trucks, vans delivering product to the site. And eventually, as you get to see the floor plan, site plan, the trucks have to come into the site, and then to come out, they have to make a 180-degree turn back out onto the road. And they're making provisions, I believe, for that type of circulation. So they promised us that they would do profiles to see that all that can be done. There was some discussion about sidewalks, which really didn't go anywhere other than on internal sidewalks. So I think Planning Commission is pretty excited about seeing the development drawings as they come in, and we'll let you know how that goes. Second item on the agenda was we all received 36 by 48 handy little maps to sketch for the township map. We have promised that we would get together at the next meeting, either with colored pencils or ideas to put on the map. So we have to really get together as a group and let some of this flourish out of our conversation. So that was the second element. The only other element that came through, and you talked about it tonight, we did receive a revised site plan on Arise. And I think that we were pleased that they finally addressed the entrance off of Venner Pike. It was not well designed initially, and I think they came about, submitted this new site plan, which I believe has some merit. And you folks approved that tonight, so I think that's, it's going to be an added compliment to the Beaver, or to the Venner Pike atmosphere. It's going to be a well-designed building. Other than that, any questions? I think Noreen's going to take over March. She wants to get in and get her foot in the door, and she'll do a good job. I'll pick it up in April, and so, any questions?
Does she know she might have to stay past 8 o'clock?
She wasn't feeling good.
Oh.
And
sorry
with
to hear
my
that.
telephone going off, it just rattled her, and so she said, I have to
The professionalism just wasn't enough. Good. Thank you so much, Bob. All right. With that, we have reports D, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just a reminder, it is February, which is Black History Month, month where we celebrate and mourn Black history. Take a moment to learn some things you didn't know. Anything else to add? All right. All right, on to the consent agenda. Is the one in the supplement, okay, great. So for the consent agenda, we have CA1, approval of minutes, January 30th special meeting, and February 2nd regular meeting. CA2, receipt approval of correspondence. We have an email from Sue Smith, January 31, about solar power. A letter from PADEP, February 4th, regarding slab cabin run evaluation report. Haven't seen one of those in a little while. It brought back some memories. An email from Daniel Materna, February 16th, regarding the casino, and an email from Donna Spiker, February 15th, regarding Center Hills Village traffic calming report. CA3, we do not have any action items tonight. Would anybody like any of these pulled? All right, seeing none, I will accept the motion.
So moved.
So,
Do you have a second?
second?
Was that you? Okay. Any discussion? I just have one item. I just want to publicly thank Frank Scott for the beautiful image of the Downy Woodpecker on the consent agenda tonight. That brought me much joy. And with that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. To Joan's comments earlier, we like to see our native birds in College Township, and we'd like them to stay here. Right, Joan? We'll do what we can. We'll do our part when we can. So, okay, done with the consent agenda. Next is OB1. Let me get back to Monday's packet. All right, Center Hills Village, traffic calming, and that's Dawn.
I'm going to give you,
Adam.
I'm going to give you a little intro, Dawn, but you can work your way up if you like. Yeah, we're here this evening. Mr. Hartzell is present. Don Hartzell is the chair of the Local Traffic Advisory Committee, which is in shorthand LTAC, which you'll hear a lot this evening. And the reason that Don is here is to provide a final recommendation on a traffic calming proposal that has been evaluated and debated and voted on within the Center Hills Village neighborhood. There's about 145 properties that constituted the study area that was evaluated for a variety of different types of traffic calming proposals. There has now been a vote that was completed. We had a vote of the neighborhood on a final version of a traffic calming plan that included a total of 14 Watt-style speed humps, 7 on Oak Ridge and 7 on Shamrock. And there was a community vote related to that. Results are in, and Dawn will be reporting on that. And in essence, what the purpose for council tonight is ultimately to have discussion. But prior to having discussion, council should receive both the results of the vote as well as the final recommendation from LTAC in the form of a motion. And then once that's been completed, that basically follows our timeline, our trajectory, our schedule within the traffic calming guidelines that we've adopted. And at that point in time, it turns over to council. And council has ultimate authority relative to the decisions that are made with respect to the traffic calming proposals that are brought forward. But that is for council to debate. But without further ado, Dawn, if you want to kind of report on what's transpired in your meeting on Wednesday, I think it was the 8th, I believe. Floor is yours. Thanks for giving me this meeting.
Okay, you already took half of my words, but I would simply like to say this was a 2-year-long process. We've gone through several iterations of the process, and I won't go into all of that. But last month, we did do a survey that was conducted by the township of the 145 properties in the neighborhood, and their results were returned by Friday, February 3rd. And again, the proposal was, do you want to, or do you agree with or disagree with implementing the 14 Watts speed humps on Oak Ridge Drive and on Shamrock Drive? And I really wanted to, first of all, I wanted to thank the neighborhood Traffic Calming Committee, and their chair is here tonight, Tom Ertzgaard, sitting right back here. I think I was really amazed at the result. Let me go over the results first, then I want to say a couple of comments. You should have in on your computer, copy of this document. On the back side of it, those of you that have a PhD in statistics from Penn State, you can take these statistics and do all you want with them. That's supposed to be a joke, you're supposed to be laughing. Right along. But the results are on this side, page 1. And basically, we surveyed 145 properties, and we had to, for this survey to be valid, we had to have 87%, or excuse me, 87 properties respond, or 60% of the property owners had to respond, or we were back to ground zero. We actually have an overwhelming response, where we only needed 60% to respond. We had 77% of the property owners responded. That's 112 property owners out of 145. I think that was tremendous. And then the next point is, of those that responded, 66% had to approve the solution that was proposed to them. And actually we had 80% of the respondents agreed with the solution that we recommended. I thought that was an overwhelming response, positive response, when you consider that of the 145 properties, only 33% of them were actually on Oak Ridge Drive itself, which was the initial problem that we were talking about. Now, you as a council, and rightly so, said we can't just solve the problem on Oak Ridge and not do something for the whole neighborhood. So you, again, rightly so, said whatever we do on Oak Ridge, we need to do on Shamrock also, which meant that about 55% of the whole neighborhood would be affected. I think the fact that you had 80% of the entire neighborhood responded positively to this. For some people, I mean, like Cottonwood and some of the other streets, they weren't really directly affected, but as a neighborhood, they came together. And I think a lot of that is because of what Tom and Eric Silver and others did in getting the neighborhood to work together and say, this is a neighborhood problem that we need to accomplish. And I think they did that, and therefore, as a local traffic advisory committee, we are recommending to you that we proceed with the finalizing the plan with Trans Associates and going to bid on, or approve the project and go to bid on it. I think Don, the other Don, my brother, has the actual.
Wow.
We'll laugh at that one.
Paperwork on it.
For the construction?
Yes.
Yeah, I talked with Nick, and if, he'd get a go-ahead on this, we would be ready probably late April, early May to have it out to bid. Then you have bid opening and then bonds and that, so it would be a July kind of a construction. And it would probably only take about 6 weeks, if that. That's from notice to proceed to final inspection.
Okay.
Questions for me? I can't make the motion. The motion has to come from you all. Questions for me on anything we did in this? It's about a 2-year-long process, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Good work from the community, from LPAC. Sure. All right, any questions for Don? All right.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Susan.
Move to acknowledge neighborhood vote results and receive final LTAC recommendation to proceed with construction of the Center Hills Village traffic calming plan.
Okay.
Second.
Any comment on the receipt of the recommendation from LTAC?
Strong work.
So the motion
Can you read that one more time,
Yeah.
Susan, a
Sure.
little slower so I can get
Yep.
that?
Sure. Move
Thank
to acknowledge neighborhood vote results and receive final LTAC recommendation to proceed with construction of the Center Hills Village traffic calming plan.
Again, this is a motion to receive LTAC's vote results. We are receiving them
And their final recommendation.
and their final recommendation. Yeah. All right. With a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? All right. Received. Now, council has this time to deliberate. It is, as Adam mentioned earlier, it is in our purview to move forward and to discuss the implications of Center Hills Village's, well, LTAC's recommendation to us, right?
Madam Chair, does the manager have a recommendation on next steps?
Well, the next steps, the one thing I would like to just simply reiterate, and it's already previously been mentioned, but College Township Council retains all of the authority to enact any kind of traffic calming measures. all the work that LTAC committee has done, which was with respect to organizing and assisting the neighborhood committee and the vote that's been taken, are based on this particular results are clear indication of what the neighborhood is interested in and will or would support. Ultimately, the decision about what is actually done there is up to College Township Council. So just to be sure that everyone understands that, yes, you have lots of support, but you're not
Right.
necessarily bound just by that. You have full latitude to make whatever decisions that you choose to make. The only other thing that I would want to mention is that this particular potential project was inserted into the 2023 budget. So the dollars are in fact available based on the original cost estimates that we worked with at budget time, which was approximately $80,000.
Yes.
So that money is available in the 2023 budget in the event that this comes to fruition. So at this particular point in time, I think it would be appropriate, Madam Chair, simply to get a sense of what individual members of council are thinking in terms of supporting what has been brought forward tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate that. Would anybody like to start? Does anybody have any thoughts?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yeah, no, having sat, yes, I sat on the committee, served with Don. It appeared like it's a very robust process. It's a well-thought-out process, and the neighborhood support for the project is overwhelming. And it looked like it was a well-executed plan.
Great.
So I would support accepting the result and moving forward.
Thank you, Susan. Excellent. Which, I'll go to you, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm interested in is just seeing, I like options, I like different courses of action as well. I mean, and I know this is going through the neighborhood, but I'd like to see some mock-ups of, the full-fledged 14, right? Maybe a reduction by half, as far as, what we look like that way and the costs and so on with all that.
Okay.
Just so it gives us some, I guess, left and right boundaries, if you will, a little bit to, that flexibility on decisions wise.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we do actually have some visuals of
Of the full fledged.
of the whole
Of the 14?
process, so we can put those up, and Mike, if you can run through those.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you, Mike. Let's do that
Or
now.
Dawn, maybe you can narrate, or...
Okay.
Could I speak to that?
Well, let's do, to Dustin's comment.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
all I want to say is, what was recommended by Trans Associates, we asked them to come up with the most efficient, effective process or solution. In other words, we could have gone with much less, say
Okay.
4 humps on each street, or we could have just gone with pinch points or something. We said, what would be most effective in one, reducing the cut through, which was the most important thing, because really speed was not the primary purpose. The statistics didn't show, said 85 percentile was going 32 miles per hour or less. So the primary thing was cut through. So he said, Trans Associates, what's the most effective thing that we can do on these 2 streets to cut down on cut through? And they have parameters they look at. If you're...
Don, I'm just going to interrupt you only because we've had this presentation a couple times
Okay.
before,
Yeah.
and I appreciate your ability to recite this. You have it down, and I think all of council trusts the recommendation from LTAC We understand the recommendation from LTAC. What we're doing now is looking at it from a council purview and just having our opportunity to have our piece, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should make the point that the 7, recommendation of 7 was their most effective recommendation.
Good point. Thank you very much for that.
100% effective, okay. Yeah, and then I guess my second question is, and relative to the letter that was sent in the consent agenda, I don't know how to do this, but, you know, is there some way that we can get a better idea of how this will affect other neighborhoods, right? Is this gonna all of a sudden just push traffic over to another place to cut through that, you know, we thought we fixed, or, you know, so, like, I don't know how do you mitigate that? And I think there were some good points in the letter, and that was CA2D, I believe, right? People are gonna cut through, people are gonna get from one side of town to the other, so how do we effectively manage that? Do we, you know, it's all of a sudden, are we gonna cause a problem for the borough? Are we gonna push a bunch of people up in University Drive? I don't know. You know, so that's just one point I wanted to make, but.
I mean, I would think Elmwood and Lamont would be the other logical way through.
Well, yeah, I think what would happen is any traffic that is trying to go from, let's say, Hills Plaza over to Hauserville would, instead of going through Squirrel and Oak Ridge, would be going down Brush Valley Road, and turning onto Elmwood.
Yeah.
Or going on through Pike Street.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
those roads are designed to handle
Yeah, they're.
those volumes.
Okay.
Let's go through the map quickly, if we may.
Okay, Branch Road. I don't know where I got Branch Valley Road, but anyhow.
There's a Brush Valley Road over there.
Yeah, there's Brush Valley.
Where your
and-
brother
Panama.
Okay, but anyhow.
New extension.
At least I didn't say Panama. Okay, what we see here is one of the sections of the map, and this actually still shows pinch points. And the reason we're doing that is because what we can't do is adjust locations if in fact we end up having to move ahead. Like we could go for speed humps to start with, if that's what the council would want to do. But we would still keep them in the general locations shown on these plans. Because if we start moving things around, then all of a sudden, we can't fit the full design in. And when Trans did this, they used the distances between these as recommended in design manuals. For example, if you only have one speed hump, people slow down in almost a mile of road or half mile of road. People will slow down for that speed hump and then gun it afterwards. And the way these speed humps are designed is you don't have time to gun it between speed humps. So the idea is it'll result in a uniform slowdown. And if in fact we would have 7 speed humps and we still don't have the reductions that we want, then the pinch points could then still be put in. But if we start moving them around, then maybe the full build out would not be possible.
Thank you. That's a good caveat. I appreciate that additional piece. Maybe Don was gonna get there, sorry. Cutting you off there, Don. All right, Eric?
Sure. A couple of comments, maybe to help frame the discussion. Remember, we recognized this as a need way back in the land development plan. We identified it. We committed to supporting some form of yet-to-be-determined mitigation. So much so that we negotiated a $50,000 contribution for the developer specifically for this. Is that $70,000 our share on top of that, or?
Yeah, that's a total cost.
Okay, so.
Yes, that's correct.
The $50,000 covers a good chunk of this.
A great portion of that is already into design.
Okay, whatever. And at that point then, we handed it over to the neighborhood. We handed it over to LTAC, because we have a process in place. They came back with a suggestion that we didn't support. It came back to us, a suggestion to close off Squirrel Drive, and it wasn't that we didn't support that, but we were uncomfortable supporting it until we saw what effect other mitigation would have. You know, if we could accomplish 90% of the cut-through traffic without closing Squirrel Drive, we were interested in seeing that. So we kicked that back to the committee, and then they came back with this plan, okay? And as Don noted, with the help of a professional traffic engineer, designed this. Not the neighborhood, but the professional transportation engineer designed it. Then it went to the neighborhood, it came to us, and we endorsed it. You know, let's not forget that we endorsed this. We had a chance to say, no, that's overkill, back before it even went to a vote. So it seems to me it would be a little bit disingenuous of us at this point to go back and say, well, wait a minute, you know, I want to revisit this, because it's like the sketch plan. You know, we had a shot at it when it first came to us before it even went to a vote. So now it's gone to a vote. It's been overwhelmingly supported by the neighborhood, particularly an even higher percentage of the people, supported by even a higher percentage of the people on the two streets that have it than the overall percentage. So it seems to me that we should be supporting this at this point, and anything less than that, I think, would be unfair to the LTAC, to the people, and to the process.
Thank you, Eric.
I would add, though, that any traffic that's diverted, and this is an important point, we're talking about neighborhood streets here that have this traffic we're trying to get off. If you look at the options for diverting where it would be diverted, it's all going to be diverted to collectors and arterials.
Yes.
One of these is a collector, just to
Oh,
remind
is
you.
Oak Ridge a collector?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're not diverting it to any street. In fact, East College Avenue is an arterial, I would imagine.
Yes,
University Drive, is that a collector or an arterial?
arterial.
Okay, so the two likely candidates are arterials, which are designed to support a much heavier level of traffic. And I have to think, just ballparking it, that the increase would be negligible compared to the capacity of the street. So just my thoughts. I have profound respect for the process and the work that's been done already, and I wanted to acknowledge that in my comments.
Thank you, Eric. Rich?
No, I think Eric said it very well. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I stayed at Holiday Inn Express. But so I too respect the professionals involved and the process. This wasn't come at lightly, you know, like we didn't just decide to do this. It's been I would offer it's even been longer than the 2-year process.
Well, it goes back to the land development plan.
I would argue it goes back to the rezoning.
That's exactly where
Exactly.
exactly where I would take it as well and everything. And so, at a glance, you know, unfortunately, no good deed goes unpunished, or there's always unintended consequences for a lot of things. But the investment and the thought and the township's investment into this, to where we are now, I support.
Okay. So I'm going to add my comments as somebody who sat on the LTAC committee for 2 years during the vast majority of this process. It was well done. It was professional. I would say Trans Associates, I'm blanking on his name.
Nick Schaefer.
Nick Schaefer was excellent, did what we asked of him. Don Hartzell was our chair for both those years, ran some strong meetings. Kudos to you. You know, some of those committee meetings aren't easy because the closer people are to the changes being made, the hotter it can get, right? And there's nothing closer than the road right outside your house. So all of that is very understandable. I will now add my comments to the recommendation, and my only hang-up is still and always has been emergency services, and then I'm gonna add actually the school districts, though vague, still hesitant comments made at our meeting. Both emergency services, also sort of restrained concern, I'll say, with the number of speed humps, and school districts' restrained concern with the number of speed humps. I do feel we're kind of a come and go as far as the discussion went the last time it came before council. We did not address them, to my satisfaction anyway. So that being said, Dustin's request for our bidding of the full 7, and then a potential scaled back. I wouldn't say half, I would go a little bit more than that. I mean, you can't half 7, but maybe 5, something, I'm not sure. I do think is warranted. There are the people who live there and they want the traffic, they want the cut-through traffic to end, and I completely respect that. I also feel that primarily the emergency services that have to get through that neighborhood or to that neighborhood are an important consideration. And I do feel we're either overlooked because they didn't make it to all the meetings, or because there was just so much else to talk about. But that has been the one piece that has still hung with me, and I have concern about.
What is going to, I mean, they can still get there from either direction.
They can get there from either direction.
They can't cut through as fast, but emergency services is not going to cut through. They're going to go in there to get to an emergency, right? Whatever it is, and then get out.
And I guess I have a question. I'm late to the process. And so looking at this, one of the questions I asked Don about the engineering, that specifically 7 humps had been requested. I did go out and I drove through there to look at the sites and drove through as if I were driving over humps. And I did find that I got that consistent rate of speed. I went slower. So I'm not an engineer, but I assumed an engineer would have designed the perfect design on some level. What would be the impact of cutting that number back? And would the engineers be able to tell us how that would affect how effective the plan would be? And then I guess the other question I had was, with emergency services and comments, did they not have the chance to comment, or did we close down comment too soon during the meeting?
No, so they did have a chance to comment, and they commented actually at a couple meetings. So there's not any, it has nothing to do with how the meetings ran or, at all. It has to do with their comments being, we're not gonna say no, but they just said, it may affect our trucks, it may affect our operations. It's just a very general, it may. The school districts was also a bit convoluted and maybe not terribly direct, but there are buses that go through that neighborhood that will then be going over
the humps. Right.
A lot of humps. And let me, I guess I didn't fully flesh out my thoughts, which is that the 7 is what is recommended, and I believe that the 7 is the ultimate goal. I just want to throw this out, I just want council to just make that decision. I just felt like I wanted to be the mouthpiece for those, I agree, reserved comments from both parties, but neither party was like, no problem. That's the piece. Neither party was like, I have nothing to add. There is not an issue here. And that to me is like, just something to bring up at this point, and so I do believe the 7 is the goal. I also am just throwing out getting the bid for both the 5 and the 7 should our 80,000, I mean, we're paying for these. I have no idea what the bids will come back. And then we are also, no matter what, doing a traffic count in a year after installation. 7 is the ultimate, in my mind, always, 7 is the ultimate speed hump build out. And then still, if the traffic count is not to what they need it to be, to that cut through goal, then the pinch points become part of the conversation too. I mean, this is in no way, my comment is in no way undoing the work that the local traffic calming committee went through. My comment is just a final, and I'm not gonna say this is new. Dawn knows, Amy knows. I've been throwing out the phased approach all along. It makes things more complicated, I agree. Which speed humps would you put? I agree, that's a complicated decision. The 2 on the outside, the 2 on the inside, balance it out in the middle, because we're not moving them so that we can add them if we need to. I agree that it makes it more complicated. I also totally respect Eric's comments. Eric is our process guy, always has been, and I appreciate that. That said, we are the voting body, and we still have the final say. So I would be remiss if I didn't make these comments now.
Can I just make one comment?
Please.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate, I guess my question was caught off a little bit, flush it out. 100% respect the process as well, and respect the 100% effectiveness. And I appreciate Don coming in and saying, look, this is the 100% effectiveness. So, in my train of thought, I was coming at it with as we get bids, let's see, again, to the phased-in approach, 100% effectiveness versus, okay, what's an 80% solution, based off the fact that we've only budgeted 80K, right? That's where I'm kind of looking at. All right, what if it does come in and the 14 is way above our budget? What do we do then? Because we didn't, also get a bid out there for something smaller. That's basically what I was just trying to say.
Okay.
And an alternate bid is very easy. You could have the base bid be the 7, maybe 2 alternates, if you want to do 5 or 4 on each one. So you could do 7 alternates. I wouldn't recommend that, but
Thank you.
but you could do 1 or 2 alternates if you wanted to.
What I heard is we need to get to the real number. And I like Don's approach that, until we approve the final construction contract, it's still a discussion.
It's still a discussion.
So, this isn't a motion, this is a direction that staff is looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, as far as next steps, what I think staff is looking to come out of this meeting with is direction from council about what we should be working with our transportation engineer to do. Are we putting together a bid for the plan as was presented and voted on and that was recommended here in the final from LTAC to council this evening, or is it something less than that, or is it some combination? And I think once council is able to provide that direction to staff, we obviously know what to do with that. And Dawn will be working with Trans Associates, and we'll be able to put those details together and come back to you. And I'm assuming, Dawn, that's a relatively short turnaround in terms of...
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so within a few weeks, we
great.
should be able to be back in front of you with that information, so that there isn't there's not a likely delay, and that we can still essentially meet the bidding and construction schedule that Dawn had previously laid out, or very near to it.
Right, and to keep with that schedule, if we wanted to get 2 bids just for pricing, we'd do it at the same time, right?
Oh, everything, yeah. You want to explain how we would put this out in the form, a base
Well,
bid?
yeah, it would have a set of plans that would show all 7 on both roads, and then there would be notes for the alternate. These 5 on this road and these 5 on this road are all bid alternate 1, or these 4 on each road are bid alternate 2. So that they would be able to give us 3 base bid, or a base bid and a bid alternate 1 and 2. And then, if it comes in at 120,000 for the base bid, then you can look at the alternates.
Perfect. Yeah, that's all.
I mean, you get economy of scale, so when you're doing 7 on each road, it'll be cheaper per unit than if you're only doing 1. But I would recommend to do that just in case they come in high. I mean, the bidding atmosphere the last couple of years has been crazy. There's different issues that you have to look at. Now, this is purely asphalt and paint pretty much, other than signs, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of issues with availability of materials.
Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to go back through us and just see what the temperature is for getting, going straight 7 or 14, let's talk in full numbers, going straight 14, or getting also an alternate bid. I'd also like to, well, yeah, let's just do that. Susan?
I'm still in favor of going with the LTAC committee's decision. I think that, coming back to this, the residents have voted on it. So coming into it at the process, I can appreciate your comments, having missed a lot of the process. But from the point I've come in on, that's what I would go with, is soliciting the bid for the 14.
Okay, thank you. Dustin?
Yeah, I'm in favor of getting the alternate bids with it, just for budgeting purposes, just so we know that, we have this much money to work with.
Yeah. Do you want to throw out some alternate thoughts?
Yeah, so, obviously go for the full effectiveness at the 14. So, you cut 14 and a half is 7. Maybe a 6 and a 6. Or, if we could do 2 alternates, we could do, a 4 and a 5, or a 4 and a 4. I don't know what that looks like. I would defer to.
Well, whatever we do on one, like Don said, whatever we do on one is done on the other.
Yeah, so it's even.
Always
right?
even numbers.
Yeah, even
right.
numbers.
Okay. Eric?
No, I don't support anything other than the 14 for the reasons I've noted. We sat through those years and years. We made a commitment to these folks to put in mitigation. We didn't make a commitment to spend only $70,000. We made a commitment to do what's needed.
Okay, yeah. Rich?
I support the base bid of the 14, but knowing how bidding works, I do support alternates. As far as what that configuration again, I'm not a traffic engineer. I would think that Trans could offer us, a suggestion of, whether.
Yeah, I'm thinking probably 4 and 4 and 5 and 5 would make the most sense.
I think I would trust your judgment over mine, and I would trust Trans's input into all of it, but ultimately, the starting point for me is the 14, but I slightly disagree with, I'm okay going to 100, kind of thing. I'm not going to 200 for this. That's not fair to.
Well, if it came back at 200, we could always revisit it.
I understand.
The message you send when you go out with the alternates is what I don't support.
Right. No, I understand the point, but bidding it is the efficiency for staff, the bidders, all that kind of stuff. That's what I see with the alternates. Philosophically, I support the 14, but out there in the real world, when the numbers come back and we can't, in good conscience, support that's my concern.
Okay, so I think we all know that I support the alternate bid, and I think Don's suggestion is great. More to come. This is not, again, this isn't.
So
this is neither the beginning nor the end.
just for clarity,
Yeah.
is the base bid is a given, all 14?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm hearing that am I hearing correctly that of those members of the council that support alternates, that they want a single alternate or two alternates?
Well, it sounded like 8 and 10. 8, 10, and 14, is that what I heard?
Yeah, I'm with deferring to the professionals.
Well,
Yeah,
I support 2 alternates at the direction of staff.
Yeah.
okay, and that's where I was going next. If there wasn't a specific number that anyone was tied to relative to the number of
Okay.
pumps that are gonna be alternates, what I would angle for direction to staff is for the township engineer to engage with the transportation engineer and receive the transportation engineer's recommendation on the alternate numbers. Now, that way you have somebody that does this professionally, has access to all the information, and can give, I think, back to the township engineer the information that would be necessary to have an effective traffic calming solution. So that would, I think that would satisfy, frankly, it's preferable from a staff perspective if that would be the direction that you gave to staff.
sounds good.
Could we ask them to give us a approximate effectivity for those alternates as well? Is that something they could do? If they're saying 14 is 100% effective for the mitigation?
Yeah, I don't know that that would
they're not gonna do
actually
that.
be the kind of thing you would be able to
Right.
come up with. I could ask, but I don't know that you're gonna get a percentage.
Okay.
Okay.
We actually already asked that, and they gave us this.
Okay.
What's
Yeah,
the
this
point
is
of
clearly
diminishing
most of
returns? What's the best bang for your buck? It's a question of the dollar, I guess, for those who support a backup plan.
Well, I said nothing about, I mean, I mentioned the dollar, it's true, but it was not entirely my point. But I appreciate the conversation. I do think the alternate bids are reasonable, and I understand the frustration you're feeling. I understand your
Well,
points.
at least we've got to the point where we're asking the traffic engineer for the alternates instead of us just picking numbers out of a hat.
Okay, so do you feel that you have appropriate direction?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. All right, so, moving on to OB2, Maxwell Development and Regional Impact Report. Lindsay.
Thank you. Mike, do you mind putting, I stuck the Maxwell map in visual?
All right, just give me 1 second.
All right. Take your time. So, now that the Planning Commission has provided a recommendation on the rezoning, and by association, the DRI, to council, now it's time for council to determine if you support the DRI and rezoning enough to set a public hearing to consider adopting the rezoning. If council does support this request, a public hearing can be set, and the proposal will move to CR, Center Regional Planning Agency, Center Region Planning Commission, and the general forum. But keeping in mind that since sewer service is not being expanded, the general forum does not need to approve the DRI. They just need to make a recommendation. So this evening, staff's looking for council's input on the request, the reports, and the responses to the reports from staff. I have a map here of the area in question, and the PC did see this and made their recommendation at their meeting not last meeting, the meeting before. So I'm just looking for your input tonight and any questions you may have. I did sketch out a timeline. If council does schedule a public hearing tonight, the DRI will go to CRPC for their March meeting, and then to general forum again for their March meeting. And that would put us in place to have a public hearing tentatively on April 20th of 2023. And John Stepp is here if you have any questions representing Mr. Maxwell.
All right, so this, we have seen this before, you're wondering why it looks familiar.
Oh, yes. Yes, this has been, the part of the DRI process is pretty intense. So you did see this when John approached council with Mr. Maxwell to find out if you would support a DRI. And now here we are.
Okay. So you are looking for, is there a recommended motion in here that we should use at any point here?
Just to set the public hearing.
Just set the public hearing.
Yeah, so the motion.
And that's April?
Yeah, for April
20th.
20th,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Okay, any questions for Mr. Seth or Lindsay? Chris?
No, again, we saw this before, we indicated support for it prior. For me, that hasn't changed, so if this is the next step, then I'm ready.
Great, thank you. Eric?
Mostly for staff. I did actually read the whole DRI because I live 200 feet from the property in question, but I do support the request. So the DRI noted they anticipate traffic to double from 150 to 300 cars a day. Outside of peak, I agree, I think Gerald is fine, except at the tracks. And my question for Amy is, are we ever going to see that improvement at the tracks?
Train, just so everybody knows, he's talking about the train tracks at the
we
bottom.
actually just talked about that today, this week, because it seems hot and heavy for a while, and then it just stopped. As far as I know, there is still to be improvements at the Struble rail crossing with the improvements to the light at College.
Okay, I bring that up only because without this improvement, and at the current 150 vehicles per day, because of the type of traffic that comes in and out of there, you see a lot of tractor trailers, you see a lot of long, so you end up sometimes with a very long queue, oftentimes crossing the tracks. Now, to be fair, the train goes really slow.
That it does.
And the train could stop before it hits anybody. But it did raise the question, if it would be nice to have that improvement in place before the traffic doubles, particularly the type of traffic we're talking about. Tractor trailers, tractors pulling long flatbeds. That's what goes in and out of Maxwell's all day long.
Yeah, and of course, that was a grant, federal grant from the railroad side. And so we had very little to do with that whole spark of that improvement. We just don't know why it's been delayed.
So maybe we could just ping them every now and then to see if it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, we actually, Frank Scott and I talked about it earlier this week. He was going to reach out to PennDOT to see if they knew anything, because they obviously have to review the traffic signal plan as part of the coordination of both items. So,
okay.
I don't have an answer because we just talked about it a couple of days ago.
All right, so just keep that. And then the other question was, in Mark Bokel's cover letter to Lindsay, the bottom of the second page, he references the township should establish findings to support the proposed rezoning to ensure that its approval would not establish a precedent for similar requests. As already noted in this meeting, I'm a stickler for precedent. Do we have an idea of how we can rationalize this and not create a...
Yes.
We don't have to have an answer now, but as we go through the process...
Well, so I've been thinking about that too, and my basis for recommending this rezoning is the fact that, one, they're not going to be able to expand the sewer service area.
That's the big one.
Yeah, and the soils are poor, so even if there was a more intensive use proposed and there was a better chance for them to get the DRI with sewage, the soils wouldn't allow them anyways.
That's kind of what I saw as the filter.
Okay.
And if staff is comfortable with requests that come in and we use that as a filter and we're not creating an opportunity for somebody to, then I'm comfortable if staff is.
Okay, great, thanks, Eric.
All right, Dustin.
I just did want to clarify, I pulled it up on GS, but I wanted to clarify this. So, yeah, according to this schematic here, right, it's approximately 3 acres being taken off of the very most northern portion of that parcel, right, that abuts up to their current operation. And they own both parcels, and the parcel is rectangular in fashion. It goes the whole way then up to Lions Paw Alumni Association or the prison property. It abuts up against what is the forest, right, and which is why it was originally the forest district, or the forest zone. Okay, just wanted that clarification. Yeah, so if you go south, right, because that's oriented north, if you go south, it comes up against Mount Nittany with no other, the parcel has no other houses or anything in between that and Mount Nittany.
There's one right off the map, but there's no significant.
Right, it's kind of indented in, right, you're talking about that little one right there?
But then there's another one after that.
It's Lion's Paw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Maxwell's homestead was on this, the remainder of that forested property. So that's why his request was just for the 3 acres of about the 30 that he does have.
Right, and that 3 acres from the pictures looks like it's mostly cleared already, right?
Yeah, right.
It's not forested, okay.
It's not.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I support it like I did before, and I think those were some of my same reasons before. So I still support it.
Thank you, Dustin.
No, and I mean, the questions that have been asked so far have answered my questions, so I'm fine.
All right, thank you, Susan. I would just like to thank you for the DRI report. It was thorough, and I think, to your point, I read that comment too, from the Planning Commission, and it, it puts up a flag, but I do think that in the DRI, it calls out some of those, I guess, unique characteristics of the request. And I do feel it justifies it. I would also like to point out that staff, I can't find it now, but did you address it in your notes, or it's the memo at the bottom, specifically that concern. It talks about you do have your one paragraph about the consistency with the comprehensive plan. But I also thought you pulled out the point about the soils and the, here it is, maybe. I'm not sure, but I think it is not only in meaning, but I think it's also in writing. Let's make sure that it is in the official.
Yes, I do believe that, I remember putting it in here, specifically speaking to the soils. The Planning Commission's comments weren't they didn't have many comments, but our discussion was mostly on what you were concerned of, it's the precedent, and what we can do in the future to kind of stop more development taking up our mountainside.
Oh, here it is. It's the very final paragraph. Staff finds the rezoning acceptable for a few reasons, which include the fact that the soil is undesirable and building something denser without expanding the sewer service is nearly impossible, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to,
Never read that. I just wanted to make sure that was something staff was comfortable taking forward with future requests.
Got you.
And if they thought there was loopholes in there that, this is not related to a motion to set a public hearing tonight, but just out of curiosity, since the buffer is mentioned several times in the DRI, that it's remaining.
Right.
I think it said 100 feet or 125 foot. I don't think it's that wide. But
Yeah, this area right here.
it's not that wide, really. But if and when we get to the actual rezoning process, does the township have the ability to require that those trees not be cut down? Because the distance is not an adequate buffer. What makes it a usable buffer is the vegetation.
Right. That's a good question. I don't know if that's something we could add on as a condition when the land development plan.
Like I said, when we get to that process, I'm going to bring that up because it's not the distance, it's the fact that it's forested. If it becomes unforested, in all likelihood, it's an inadequate buffer between an industrial and a residential.
Yes, exactly. And
It just makes things look a little smaller, that's it.
and you just, I mean, this was one of the buffers that we set the example of here. When this rezoning happened,
Right. We had this discussion when they first came in about that buffer.
right, yeah, so that's kind of what we are going for. It's a little narrower, but I hope, yes, I'll look forward.
We don't
to
have near the
bringing that
width
up.
there as we had there, so the trees are even more important.
Yeah, right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. All right, anything from the public? Anybody online wish to speak to this? All right, seeing none. I will accept a motion to set public hearing for April 20th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, further comment, concerns? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have NB1, Planned Residential Development Ordinance Modification. Back to Lindsay.
Okay, thank you. Grab this. Okay, so this is a new one tonight. Mike, I do believe I sent you just a map of the area, if you want to pop that up, if you don't mind.
Is it in visuals, Nancy?
Yes.
Okay. I'll-
Okay, so this is a rezoning request. We have a developer requesting rezoning for a portion of Dale Summit, specifically the Rogers tract, which is approximately 50 acres, and it's located on the southern side of the Shiloh Road interchange. So as you know, we're under contract with DPZ Co-Design, and the Dale Summit area plan is still ongoing.
Hey, can I interrupt for a second? Yeah. Do you have a bigger picture of the little one that's in the memo? Any chance we have one?
Oh, yeah.
We could put up there?
Is that what Mike's trying to find?
Yeah, Lindsay, you
That's
said
like clear as
you put it in visuals.
Yeah, it's
Old
just like
eyes.
You
PRD.
didn't bring your monocle?
Yeah, it's not, I don't see it.
Oh,
Rich, you would have a monocle in your bag.
It's in his jacket pocket, his vest.
Oh,
This is here.
I don't have my best.
I'm not loaded.
You can
no,
keep
but I can
going.
probably
I-
do a-
Yeah.
send it over to you.
We're trying to get there.
We're working the issue.
Amy's
Is
gonna
it
do a quick
this?
screenshot
Oh.
and send it over.
I
Right, is it this
tried
one here?
zooming, but it gets all blurry.
Right here, right?
Yeah.
It's starting
Okay,
blurry.
well, I can.
Lindsay, this?
Is it? So it's not my eyes?
No, it's not you.
Even while you're
All right,
Yeah,
squinting.
that's
like that,
picture.
okay.
Yeah.
Is it?
We'll get it over
It's
to
in
you.
the visuals.
Yeah.
All right.
DRI,
Is that the,
LKS, the word.
Lindsay, you can continue while they
Okay.
work on it, thank you.
Thank you. So, as you all know, we're under contract with DPZ, and the Dell Summit Area Plan and corresponding form-based zoning updates are moving forward. So to rezone an area right now sounds a little unreasonable. But especially because we're gonna be going through a major overhaul of our zoning in just a few weeks here. But the developer's offering some flexibility with their design. And we're gonna work with them to prepare a master plan for the site that has elements of form-based code. Since this isn't a sketch plan quite yet, I don't really have many details of how it will look. But if you can imagine something, walkable, strategically placed parking, to ensure the townhomes can be accessed, but still maintain a nice backyard and a nice entrance into their home. A central open space for residents and visitors, mixed use with commercial element, and a design that's going to align a lot better with the vision that we've established in the Dale Summit Area Plan. So tonight, I'm really looking to receive your input on the options that we had set forth in the memo. And really, if there are any showstoppers, anything that you think that we should come up with another option, or anything else to consider. The next step would be the remand to the planning commission, where staff will work closely with them and DPZ for guidance to ensure the steps we take to rezone will complement the form-based code and make for a catalyst project the rest of the Dale Summit area can use to guide them for future development. So some of this, I'll just review quickly the 5 proposed. The original request was to simply take the planned residential, to take the PRBD, which is the Planned Research and Business Park Development or District, and add that to the planned residential
To allow
development. Sorry.
PRD to function within that district.
Well, this
Thank
isn't
you.
convoluted at all. The
No,
PRD
it's not.
with the
So I'm-
PRD with a B on the side.
Yes, so I'm trying really not to use a lot of acronyms, but, so what we would really do, what the original request was to take the PRBD, which is the existing zoning district here, and allow planned residential developments within the PRBD. The problem is the PRBD is specifically for business parks, research parks, and there are no residential uses permitted in the PRBD. And our PRD ordinance
Likewise.
allows for only residential zoning districts. You can apply a PRD in the residential, for single-family residential, multifamily residential,
You said
RO.
RO.
Residential office, because
Yeah.
it has that residential component, and R3. And
R3?
those, other than the RO,
Which is
yes, sorry, multifamily.
The most.
Yes, in which we did just rezone an area. So most of those zoning districts are over here with the exception of the RO. But some of the other options we have, other than what the exact request was, would be to change the PRBD, which this would be a whole rezoning to gateway commercial. Gateway commercial is our mixed-use zoning district. But that doesn't allow us to even apply the PRD unless we actually permitted that. So that's one, permit the PRD and the PRBD with the density permitted in the multifamily residential, which is 22 units per acre. We could change the whole PRBD to residential office, which would allow the applying of the PRD, and the PRBD to multifamily, which would be a little bit closer to what the request was, because they're looking for that 22 dwelling units per acre. And then, of course, do nothing and wait until, DPZ comes in. But I do think that with the eagerness and excitement we see from the developer, I think, doing something here is just going to give us a really good opportunity to realize that vision of Dale Summit and see those actual changes moving forward faster than we thought we would. So DPZ has, offered to take a look at the master plan and change it and make it more form-based. So there's a lot of really exciting opportunities here, and we're just looking for you to give us some guidance and remand this to the planning commission so we can keep working on it.
Thank you, Lindsay. Go
If
ahead.
I can chime in on Lindsay's comments. I do think that this is a very unique opportunity. There are elements of our agreement with DPZ that set up very nicely for what I'm calling that's not the technical term that is used, but demonstration type projects. And while we're very, very early on in the process, I do think that this is the type of project, and again, given some of the indications that we have had in our initial meeting with the developer prior to this coming forward, I do think that this is a real opportunity for College Township to work with the developer, but also with our consultant that's in hand, to begin to implement elements and aspects of this form-based code. And I think that it has a lot of promise to set the example and to set a tone, if you will, not only for future development, but for this process that we're about to embark on, this multi-year process of considering the form-based code type changes in Dale Summit. So I just wanted to echo the comments that Lindsay has made here. I think there's a number of different ways to get there using what we have at the moment, but I think we need to keep in mind that should this move forward, that it's an opportunity to utilize the resources that we now have in hand with DPZ to actually implement that vision. So.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you so much, Lindsay, for laying that out and for fielding this situation. First of all, for everybody's reference, orienting yourself to the map, the parking lot at the bottom right is the movie theater. And then you have Shiloh Road running up. UAJA is off the screen to the top left. So if that helps you figure out what you're looking at. So where's the well?
Right there.
Right there. Okay, so we're talking about the town side of Shiloh Road, not the other side. Okay. Great. On the residential development, I always forget what it's called. It's right off.
That's Pleasant Point.
Pleasant
and
Point,
then
thank you.
Evergreen Heights is under
Yes.
development.
Yeah, thank you. I just, it's such an opportunity if we zone and then we wait. And wait, such as we did with the PRBD. That was rezoned, gosh, 8 years ago maybe, and very little has happened with it, if nothing, actually, with the planned business.
Planned research business.
Just call it a research park.
Business park.
Business park, yeah. Yeah, with the business park. So we did rezone that and we have waited. So all that to say, this is an opportunity it's just not every day you get to do this. Yeah, Adam.
Real quick, yeah, you're right. It's been at least 8 years since this was zoned to business park. But keep in mind that in more recent times, there have been rezonings that have occurred here. If you want to zero around Pleasant Point, okay, we have Pleasant Point. That was a portion of this business park that was rezoned to to R2. R2. And then now the parcel beside it, which is now going to be the home for, I'll get it, Evergreen Heights,
which is
our senior housing complex. That was rezoned to R3. So out of the original, if you will, original parent tract of business park, we now have already, over the last several years, we've carved out some of that. And again, to me, it's indicative of the fact that, well, maybe the original business park zoning wasn't exactly the right zoning. That happens, and it still may be the right zoning. But I just wanted to be clear that we have already made changes out here to accommodate some other types of activity, which have taken a more residential type flavor than what we had perhaps originally anticipated.
Right. No, thank you for that addition. That actually helps color my perspective too. I would also like to say that this is a great moment to for the Adam memo to Planning Commission when council remands something. So our comments, it may not get remanded at all. I don't know. But if we do decide to remand it, let's make sure to consolidate our comments very clearly to Adam's, and then Adam, when and if that memo comes to be, that will then come back to council for the, yes, that is what we meant and said, and then that will go to Planning Commission. So, first off, let's get the feeling on taking, whether or not we want to take a look at this, whether or not we want to remand this to planning commission. I'm just gonna kind of go down the line, take a straw poll. Rich?
Absolutely, I want to remand it to planning commission.
Great. Eric?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, and just for clarification, we're saying, we're gonna approach DPZ and say, look, we got this going on, right, help us out, right, okay.
And Susan?
Remand.
Okay, great, so if somebody would just go ahead and make that motion.
Is there any specifics that staff needs to see in that?
The only thing would be comments that members of council would like to make that we would capture in the remand.
The memo.
In the remand memo at this point. Right now, I have staff comments and opinions, but basically, if there are additional comments or opinions the council would like to share that we can incorporate into that remand letter, we should probably hear those.
Sure, I mean, I was intending to do that. I figured we could do that once the motion to remand was made. The comments don't need to be part of the motion.
No, I'm sorry, no,
Yeah.
you're right, my apologies, you're right.
I just don't want to have a lengthy discussion if it's not even going to go anywhere, so that's all. So you made the motion?
To remand to planning commission.
Okay, any discussion, anything online on that? And then we will continue, we will keep the.
Just a couple of questions. I mean, one for John, since he's been here for 2.5 hours.
The item is not going to close for discussion, we're going to be open for discussion, the motion right now is just to remand it to planning commission, and then we are going to discuss the item.
Fine, whatever.
Or is your question to John about remanding it?
It may be relevant.
Okay, great, then we will open it up for discussion now, and we will vote at the end of discussion.
Or it may be completely stupid. Is the request by the developer at all contingent on the school district's answer to the tax abatement? Or are we talking two separate properties, two separate developments?
We don't have to bring John up for that. The recently reported tax abatement request is in Better Township. It has no bearing on this property whatsoever.
Across the street.
It's across the township line on the same side of the street. So that was confusing. It took me a while to figure that out still. But it has no bearing whatsoever because it's in Better Township.
I bring it up because if it did, what's the point of, until we...
All right, with that, I'm going to just close the motion, because again, I will forget. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And opposed. All right, thank you. So this will now be remanded to Planning Commission. What we are going to discuss right now is our comments to Planning Commission, just council's things we would like to have Adam report back to the PC about our remand. Okay? Yeah. Super.
I think the points about precedent having been set to permit the PRD in the PRBD have been well made, and I think those should be considered as established precedent.
Okay. Adam, you got your notepad?
Yeah, and this, just to add a little clarity there, essentially, we have made other zoning changes previously to the business park district.
Right.
That
entire area was considered the business park district, and then those residential, rezoning for the residential areas there were established and already decided upon. So there's precedent for doing this.
Understood, got it.
And it sounds like the same thing.
All right. Justin?
Now I have a mouthful.
No, I can move it. We can go to the other end. You take your bite. I was actually looking for my snack. Okay. Rich?
No, I wish there was a one-size-fits-all, but there isn't. That's why we're having this discussion and everything. You can see components in several of the ones that makes part of it work, but it doesn't work on the other part of it and everything. But that's why we have a great planning commission to try to work through those. And it may be a compilation of things, really. I don't really have anything to offer in there on how we get where we want to go.
Okay. Eric?
Just to, first of all, I agree with everything Adam said in his introduction, and I'm sure that that will be conveyed at Planning Commission and be considered to the greatest extent possible. And secondly, anytime a developer comes to me and wants to develop property as a PRD, I'm like, bring it on. I mean, because PRDs provide both parties a very, very unique opportunity. If we weren't engaged with DPZ right now, my thought would be, number one, would be the easiest and quickest way if they're in a hurry, because I certainly wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to develop this as a PRD. Given where we're at, though, I think the last one would be my preference if that works, but if...
Not to consider
To
do
do
nothing.
nothing?
No, the second part of that, wait for the planning consultant, DPZ, to prepare an interim option for the Dale
Thank you,
Summit.
thank you. Okay.
I think do nothing is a little misleading, and maybe we could have just left that part out and said, wait for the planning commission.
Okay.
Or have a,
Well, I think, real quick.
Do nothing tonight.
Remember, council always has the ability to control any potential resentment.
So, yeah, we don't have to do it. We don't have to do
You
anything.
don't
Yes.
have to consider this at all.
Right.
So,
That's, I think, what was referenced.
Yeah.
that's all I had.
What, if I could, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's if you view this as an opportunity, number one, and then the other reality that the opportunity only knocks so often, so loud. So they can't, developers aren't going to wait for us to get all our ducks in a row for the DPZ.
And that's why I preferenced with the
Yep.
first one, with the PRD.
Yep, absolutely, that's,
so is that something council wants to capture in the memo, is maybe a timing component?
I would be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't let the fish fall off the hook.
Oh, that's very poetic. For 9:25 at night.
Do you want to quote that?
In your memo, you got that?
Got that.
Okay.
But, and I do think the Catalyst project that has Lindsay progressed it, I think that's very important.
Segue into.
Right, so my comments have to do with, honestly, with the PRD ordinance itself. It's been a while, and I'm sorry I didn't have the opportunity to read that before tonight. But the PRD ordinance itself, I think needs a look, which kind of goes against our timing comment, but I would be concerned leaving it as is, only because we've been bitten by that fish before. I don't know. So, planning commission should look at this, in reflection of what the PRD currently says. Yeah.
If I may expand upon that just a little bit. Late this afternoon, I sent an email to Lindsay and to Mike. Having read through it yet again, I noticed a couple of things as well, and specifically within the PRD and some of the sections of the ordinance. I think it was chapter 16, 16 specifically of the PRD ordinance. There are a lot of requirements that we list, and there are some things there that I think do bear some look by Planning Commission. I also believe that section of requirements will come under much greater scrutiny by DPZ as we move forward, because in the grand scheme of things, in essence, to a large extent, the way that form-based code will or could work is essentially as a PRD. And because of that, we already have the PRD as an ordinance, and we have lots of elements there that comprise the rules and regulations for that. And some of these requirements, I believe, the DPZ will drill down on and be able to make future recommendations to us that are going to be very consistent with a form-based code. So I hope that was clear. The point is simply that I agree there are some elements of the PRD ordinance, at least initially, and maybe quickly, that we should look at to make some more immediate corrections as we approach a potential rezone.